Dear world of imagination. Once upon a time, in a quiet little town nestled between rolling hills, there lived a girl named Kiki. Kiki was an ordinary girl in most respects, but her world was far from ordinary. She lived in two worlds simultaneously, one filled with the humdrum of everyday life and the other a fantastical realm of her own creation. Kiki's unhappiness in the real world was no secret. She lived with her grandmother, who did her best to provide love and support, but Kiki yearned for something more. The kids at school often teased her for her peculiar daydreaming and lack of interest in their games. Kiki would simply smile and retreat into her own world. In her fantasy world, Kiki was a fierce pirate captain. She commanded a ship that soared through the skies with billowing sails and gleaming cannons. Her loyal crew, a band of misfit animals and mythical creatures, followed her every order. They ventured on daring quests for hidden treasures, battling sky monsters and discovering forgotten lands. Kiki's adventures didn't stop there. She was also a brilliant sorceress who could harness the power of the elements. With a wave of her hand, she could summon storms to dance across the sea or conjure forests from thin air. Her powers were boundless in this fantastical world, and she used them to protect her friends and explore the most magical corners of her imagination. But while Kiki's fantasy world was a source of solace and joy, it was also a barrier that kept her from fully engaging with the real world. Her grandmother often worried about her, wishing she could see the happiness in her granddaughter's eyes that was so apparent when Kiki talked about her adventures. One day, as Kiki was gazing at the real world from her bedroom window, she noticed her grandmother tending to a wilting garden. Kiki couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. She had spent so much time lost in her dreams that she'd forgotten the beauty that existed outside her window. Determined to bridge the gap between her two worlds, Kiki decided to bring a touch of magic from her fantasy world to the real one. With the same determination she showed as a pirate captain, she worked hard to revive the garden. She whispered the ancient incantations she'd learned as a sorceress to make the flowers bloom, and her grandmother watched in amazement as the garden transformed into a riot of color and life. Kiki's grandmother embraced her with tears in her eyes. "You have a world of magic inside you, my dear," she said. "But remember that there's also magic to be found in the real world, right here, and in the people who love you." Kiki realized that her two worlds didn't have to be separate, they could coexist and complement each other. She continued to cherish her fantasies and adventures, but she also discovered the magic of real-life connections. Her friends at school began to see a new spark in her eyes, and her world became brighter than ever. Kiki had found the key to her happiness, the ability to weave the enchantment of her dreams into the tapestry of reality. She learned that it was possible to be both a pirate captain in the sky and a bright star in her own world, shining for all to see. The end.